You're listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Your favorite source for gaming, film, and internet debate starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sokan Podcast. I'm your host, T, and with me are Jace and Leo.
Jace Drayson.
Hello, I'm Leo.
What if we talked in those voices for the whole podcast? If I just talk like this and you talk like this for the whole podcast.
You do a really good impression of me doing that. Hello. Let's do it.
Let's
All right.
not.
It'll hurt my throat though. Batman voice is gonna cause some issues.
So, remember how we talked about Amazon breaking into the gaming market and how they're working on releasing their Stadia competitor, Luna?
I remember.
I think we called it the Stadia competitor.
Stadia. Preference of branding. Well, they basically just shut down their game, Crucible. No future updates, no more support. That's not a good sign for them.
No, that's what we'd call a red flag.
And it really worries me because I can't do that voice. I really want them to do this Lord of the Rings game. And this kind of freaks me out.
Mm-hmm. I know, especially, because I'm the same. Obviously, we're geek fans, and Lord of the Rings is like grandfather of the geek, and we've actually talked about what a Lord of the Rings endeavor might look like, and it might look like nothing if this game ain't squat, because I can't see venturing into a new game with a new project with a game that's just going to start out in the hole. And
yeah,
if you can't support your property for even like, how long has that been out? Honestly, somebody Google that. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not. And the fact that they're still in development for a number of games, and they've just, you can't say they killed this game, but they've dropped this game. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Released May of this year. Wow. That is, that's troubling, man.
That's 5 months, if that.
And 5 months in probably what is the most lucrative video game market that has ever existed.
Yeah. Yikes. Wave the red flag. Flee. Remember that red flag perfume? There was an SNL skit. I'm off on a tangent. There was an SNL skit called Red Flag Perfume, and it was like the girl would walk up and say, "Hi, I'm a dancer." And red flag. Like that.
Well, this week we'll be covering further developments of the Apple v. Epic lawsuit, circling back to the theater shutdowns that have been foreshadowed throughout quarantine, and discussing the upcoming Blade movie in the MCU. A few weeks ago, we talked about the increasingly infamous lawsuit debate between Epic Games and Apple. Everything from monopolizing the Unreal Engine to simple antitrust lawsuits has been thrown into this case. So why are we coming back to the topic before the trial has happened? Well, because according to the judge presiding over the case, and a lot of reports so far, this case may just, quote, reshape the digital economy. To quickly recap in more detail, Epic made in-app purchases possible on the iOS store version of Fortnite without going through Apple, which made it possible for them to not give Apple a percentage of their profits. Apple removed Fortnite because that's against their contract. Epic responded with an antitrust lawsuit. Before, you guys were mostly leaning on the side of Apple in this debate. Before we jump into any new developments, any changes on that?
I thought both companies are guilty of some not so good practices. And I remember feeling Epic was hypocritical in calling what Apple does anti-competitive, because I think Epic does a lot of similar stuff. But so I honestly don't know if I can say I've had a change of heart. I don't remember where I fell.
I think that where I fell was that I felt like, when you jump into business in the App Store as a developer, you do agree to the terms of service. You sign a contract, and Epic was trying to leap the gate. So while I am certainly sometimes offended by the level to which these huge corporations put the finger down on top of these developers, you know what you're signing up for, right? So I still stand by that. I will say, since that, I have listened to a couple of NPR programs that gave me a little more context to maybe how I think, but maybe we'll get into that later. But yeah, I think I still land where I land. A contract is a contract, and if you don't honor that, what you got?
Yeah, it's a weird, Epic's argument is basically, yeah, we know we broke the contract we agreed to, and we felt we were going to go ahead and do it because Apple is an evil monopoly. Like that. I mean, great. It's a wonderful opinion, but you can't break a contract.
Epic's attorney, Catherine Forrest, and the judge presiding, the Honorable Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers, had a lot to say to each other. The judge was pretty harsh with Epic, stating that they broke a contract they knew they'd signed ahead of time, and that their legal practices and theories were questionable at best. Forrest responded by saying they knew that they broke the contract, but claimed that the developers were simply, quote, refusing to comply with an anti-competitive contract, end quote, that, quote, harmed tens of millions of iOS users, end quote. Other arguments about anti-competitive behavior aside, is Epic making a stand on behalf of all developers? Or do you side more with Gonzalez-Rogers in that they're simply trying to make something out of nothing?
When in doubt, go with the judge. I mean, I feel like that the judge has a better understanding of what's going on than I do. But one of the things that I have come to understand since the last time we talked about it is the concept of what's known as a two-sided market. And it did kind of change my perception of the evilness of Apple. So it really cemented more for me that when you get in bed and sign a contract, you've got to abide by the terms of the contract. And if you don't want to sign the contract, that's fine. You can fight it different ways. You don't have to have a contract with someone in order to make a change or make a difference or make a stink. In our country, you can litigate just about anything. But I would definitely side with the judge.
Well, the judge did have, I don't know, she kind of gave it to both sides in terms of saying, yeah, you guys had this agreement, you guys had this contract, and you decided you weren't going to honor it, but also said, yeah, Apple's, pretty much got a nasty monopoly here. But if we make this change, it could affect a remarkably large market, and I'm not sure yet, what the consequences of a ruling would be. And there's, I don't know, it has grown complicated beyond my layman's understanding of it. So the fact that the judge was unwilling to really lay anything down yet, pending more research and more, more follow up with the potential ramifications of a decision. I mean, I think there's quite a bit at stake here.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm not sure it's cut and dry as you had a contract that you failed to honor. I mean, at its surface, it sounds like that, and on a first blush, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, Epic, you had a contract, you failed to abide by it, you did wrong. But there really is a lot here at play. It's a significant thing.
It has implications in so many different aspects of business. First of all, it's not just relegated to the iPhone industry or even the cell phone industry. For instance, iPhones really only account for less than half of smartphone users in the United States alone. So I think it's about 40 to 45% of the people have iPhones. Everybody else has something else. So it's hard to say you have a monopoly on apps when less than half of the population are using that platform to using an app. If you have a smartphone, you're using apps. So, but to me, what I have come to understand is this really is about how we in America, in our style of capitalism, view a two-sided market. And what a two-sided market is basically when you've got a platform or a place where you're bringing together producers and consumers into some kind of marketplace, into a platform. So here in this instance, App Store. But this business model is getting huge in America. You've got things like Amazon, who brings buyers and sellers together. You've got things like Uber or Lyft that is bringing drivers and travelers together. Airbnb hosts and stayers together. So this two-sided market situation, what the outcome of this case could have implications that ripple through all of the places where we say,
yeah,
it's okay for us to do this two-sided market type of business. And really, the 30% is still, I mean, we said this last time, it's a standard fee for what for apps being dispersed through various platforms. It's not just Apple doing it. There's a lot of places that charge that fee.
Well, to elaborate on that a little bit further, perhaps the biggest piece of new information to come from this lawsuit is Epic's push for Apple to accept games outside the iOS store, a remark that could potentially include all gaming platforms and the pseudo-monopolies they hold over their own markets. The idea here is that if Epic wins, we could see a shift in how consoles, private marketplaces like the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, and even markets like Steam, hold their exclusivity rights. How do you think this could affect the future of the market?
Man, like I'm used to having conversations about crotch jokes, and this is way deeper. I think like what this could do, I mean, the idea of these exclusives and things would be no more. And I think for all my criticism of consoles and other gaming platforms outside of PC, I do think those are the best things that those platforms have going for them. And this seems like a decision that, like, thus far, there's been no wrongdoing on any of those consoles' parts. They have been obeying the law, for the most part, and they've been doing, and I think making good decisions for their own businesses. This seems like it would unduly harm them without any fault of their own. Like there was, I don't think, literally anything they could do about this.
I don't know. I mean, like in a lot of ways, I'm out of my depth here, since I always try to put things in a little more easier ways for me to understand as a layperson, as Leo said. But I'm a pretty liberal guy on almost everything except for things in things in market. Like I believe in a very free market, and I'm not against regulation for safety, and there's got to be standards. That's not what I'm saying, but I do think that when you talk about a monopoly and you want to break up a monopoly, or you want to create a wider, more open market, you got to be careful, because it's in some ways a platform is like a storefront, and if you've got an agreement with your consumers and your providers, your vendors, that is the essence of American business. It's in some ways it's like getting mad at McDonald's for not serving a Wendy's hamburger. When you go to McDonald's, you get McDonald's food. It's not like McDonald's has a monopoly over McNuggets. That's just what they serve. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, well, it's not fair for McDonald's to be the only ones that can provide McNuggets. Now, it's different, and that's an oversimplification. I know that, but it really is important that we don't clamp down on platforms for being innovative and trying to turn a profit. And I'm an anti-corporation guy in a lot of ways, but we cannot villainize money. I don't know if you're aware of, there's a huge TikTok controversy going on right now because a lady makes letters that are filled with balloons, and she sells them for $300. They're about 6 foot tall, and people are blowing up because that's just way too much to sell cardboard and balloons for. You know, if there's a market for her to sell her balloon sculptures for $300 and rich people are paying her, that's what the market is demanding, and the market will adjust itself. If she can't sell it for that, she'll lower the price. There really shouldn't be a balloon police that comes in and says, well, this is nothing but balloons. You can't charge more than $50 for this.
Right.
The market will decide what she can charge for it.
I think we start wading into like various other forms of government territory when that starts happening. And I'm totally against that too.
Well, shockingly, Microsoft continues to side with Epic Games. Considering our discussion when they bought out Bethesda and our general consensus that they were intending to make future Bethesda games exclusive to Xbox and PC, do you think it's likely that we were wrong and Microsoft may err on the side of open markets? Or do you think they just have another agenda by supporting Epic?
Frankly, I'm baffled. I have absolutely no idea.
I don't know either. The only thing I could come up with is I think they're just trying to take a shot at Apple, who's at the top of the game. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of any other reason that somebody who does the same thing would want their competitor to lose to that extent, other than it's my competitor and what hurts you helps me.
And perhaps their fingers are crossed that it only affects Apple and that it won't affect them. But that's a huge part of this, is that like Microsoft was even named in multiple sources I read about as like being a potentially direct recipient of the effects of this ruling. So I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah, Microsoft has a ton of exclusivity deals with different apps and different, I mean, a ton. Most people are on Microsoft Teams now, and so if you're a Teams 365 member, you see all these other apps that you can add to your business model if you want. There's a lot going on in the Microsoft store as well.
They just hate Apple that much. They're willing to shoot themselves in the foot to get to them.
I guess. We'll just have to see how that game plays out. Gonzalez Rogers stated that the trial would likely not take place until July of 2021, and that she'd like it to be taken before a jury. Whether this is ultimately going to change the gaming market or not, the potential of this lawsuit to hurt either Apple or Epic in astronomical proportions is a little unsettling. And one way or another, something big is going to happen at the end of this case. So, last season, way back when, people thought quarantine was only going to last a month or two. Oh, memories. AMC and Universal Pictures were at each other's throats over the digital release of Trolls 2. AMC was concerned about the potential of streaming to kill the theater business, and this pandemic could be leading to exactly that. AMC has reported that they could be out of money as soon as the end of this year. What do you think it would take to keep the chain alive? Is it even worth keeping alive, in your opinions?
I think one thing that could help keep it alive is they could not be stupid enough to ban entire production studios' movies from being shown in their theaters. That was dumb.
Yes, I think it's worth keeping it alive. And, I don't know that we should push to try to keep things going, but this is due to something completely out of everyone's scope. We don't know what the hell to do with our lives in a pandemic. So theaters are obviously one of the hard hit industries. I love going to the movies. It's one of my favorite things to do is to go into the movie. I go to the movies by myself. In fact, I prefer to go to movies by myself because I love that experience of just cinema. I don't know what it would take to save them at this point. There's not a way out of this until we are vaccinated and we have this virus under control. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything. I mean, maybe a bailout, a government bailout of the industry, but I don't see that happening necessarily.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think AMC execs have quite the pull that, let's say, high-powered financial execs do with our government representatives. The lobbyists aren't quite the same, we'll say. Outside of a buyout, man, I don't know. I do think coming up with creative means of bringing people in is a way to go, but apparently we have an AMC near us. It's actually the theater we took my daughter to, that I talked about here on the podcast a little while back, for her birthday, where we rented out the theater and we watched Jurassic Park. We paid enough to, I mean, certainly not as much as they're going to get from a theater full of patrons who are watching a new release, but something. But unfortunately, I don't think that's clearly not enough to keep a company like that going. So outside of those kinds of special events, and I don't know what else they could do, frankly. Their whole enterprise is about bringing people together to watch a movie, and together is exactly what people don't want to be right now. So I don't know.
Another major theater chain in the United States, Regal Cinemas, has been discreetly shutting down locations in less metropolitan areas. If a slightly smaller chain like Regal were to go under, do you think another chain like AMC would or even could step in to replace them? And would we then have to worry about a monopoly on the theater experience?
God, so it's not just Regal. In my town, we only have one theater. I live in a smaller city. It's not like a bohick place, but it's a smaller city. We have one theater with 12 screens, and it is, we have read in our newspaper, shutting down as well, and it's a Cinemark theater. So this is something I think that's bigger than just Regal and AMC. I mean, I think theaters across the spectrum of no matter how large or small they are dealing with this. They're in this crisis together. I don't know. If there's a last man standing situation where whoever has the most capital to outlast the virus, and then that theater steps in and buys up all the empty theaters across America, if they've got the cash for that, I mean, even if it would be a monopoly, I'd be all for it just so we could have our theaters back. But if that were to happen, if we did get that sort of monopoly situation, there's going to be court cases and that's going to get broken up. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. What occurs to me, kind of based on the last question too, is maybe they should start figuring out a way to do drive-in theater situations again. I would love that if they could. The drive-in's fun. We used to have one in my town when I was little, and that's something you could still remain isolated. And I don't know, maybe that would be an option for some other places. Set screens in their parking lots and charge cars for coming in.
That's actually an interesting suggestion. We actually have in a town near me, there's a locally famous drive-in theater, and they have been booming.
Yeah, imagine.
Yeah, but because it answers all those issues people are having. You're still relatively isolated. You do still get the experience, and you can buy popcorn if you want. I love the theater experience too, though. We've got a routine. We buy a big tub of popcorn. We put more butter on it than is probably healthy, and then we buy Coca-Cola ices because this theater here just happens to have them, and it is glorious. Mm-hmm. It almost doesn't matter what movie we're watching. It's just that, the joy of going. Plus, the best thing about it, it's an evening where I don't have to talk to people. It's magic. I don't know. As for, whether or not a monopoly could exist or erupt out of this, I think it's possible. You see it in other industries. I don't know. For some reason, theaters, they just don't. They're not as scary a monopoly to me. I don't know why. I'm not worried about it. I get worried about it with tech companies, and I get worried about it in the financial industry. Movie theaters are who cares? And that's not right. but I hope it doesn't happen. I'm not in the camp that I would accept it just so I could go to the theater, because I think I'd have a silly principled moment, and I would refuse to go. But
Well, see, I think that the market would correct. Say we have, this is me justifying what I want, but I want theaters, so somebody make the monopoly, save up all your cash. Whoever's left gets to buy all the theaters, the infrastructure's there, they start making a ton of money. Then, after the fact, we can go in and break up that theater company into smaller chains, and the market has corrected, because monopolies aren't allowed if we still have our theaters. It's fine, it'll work itself out.
it's fine.
Streaming is, of course, a quickly growing giant in the film industry. In a lot of ways, streaming is more convenient than going to a theater. But there are a series of concerns with the streaming industry. Before we get into that, do you guys think streaming could or potentially should take over where classic theaters left off?
No.
So I think they already have, to a large degree, and I think they'll continue dipping further into what theaters offered, but I don't think they will, nor do I think they should completely replace them. I think theaters will become relegated to like that special event, as opposed to the normal place you go to see new movies. I think that reality, or that, I don't know, that thing will be shared between theaters and streaming. I don't want theaters to go away, but I love streaming services, and I love being able to, just click a button in my living room and watch the new movie. So, I think a lot of other people do too.
I love streaming services as well. I might be a subscriber to everyone that exists. I'm not sure. I think I might pay every single streaming service there is a fee every month so that I can have access to their stuff. I'm not exaggerating. There might be one or two that I'm not aware of, but name it. I'm paying them. And I enjoy a lot of the programming that is on these streaming services. However, there is something in me that is eternally excited about the cinema experience, and I also think that's such a deeply American thing. Like, movies is an American product that we do the best, and we led the way, and we continue to lead the way on what it means to have just a huge blockbuster movie and what it means to make films. And one of the culture shifts I see is that a lot of the younger people, here we are with our age again, are very satisfied with smaller screens. They have a screen on everything. There's a screen on my watch, there's a screen on my phone, there's a screen on my butthole. There's screens everywhere. So they don't feel the pressure. And also, they love things like TikTok. I like TikTok too. I'm not against it. It's like 1 minute. That's all. And then you go on to the next thing. I love the experience and the ritual of going into a huge theater and experiencing a spectacle with a lot of people when the lights go down and you've all got your snack, and there's just something very American about that to me. And it is sad to think about that whole experience fading away into a niche experience, that you just do that once a year to go to the big theater. I loved to go to the movie minimum once a month. I shared on the break, I am a subscriber to our theater here, and I've continued to subscribe even though I can't go to the movies. I pay a fee every month, and I do get a free ticket and then discount on snacks when you go. But I want to support that experience. So I was using when we weren't in pandemic, I was using up my free ticket every month. I'd never had banked any, because we just go to the movies that much. I don't want that to go away.
I don't either.
It is worth mentioning, the movies industry was actually pretty relevant to keeping some of the economy rolling during the Great Depression. That's actually the origin of popcorn, is because it was something cheap that they could make. People would have a snack to buy when they went to go.
My God, not only is it cheap, but have you ever, I've run concessions for a number of fundraising things and stuff, and have you watched a room when it smells popcorn.
Yep.
It's
a wave.
It's fascinating. I mean, and I'm a victim of it, and a willing victim of it, because I love me some popcorn. Man, it's awesome.
Even if people pop it at work in the freaking microwave, is somebody popping popcorn?
Yep.
The last time we talked about this, you guys suggested, as Leo said earlier, the theaters would need to become a more luxury type experience, adapting to something like the Alamo Drafthouse style and making a whole event of any theater night. Our producer Sil suggested behind the scenes that the death of the theater business could harken us back to the early cinema days, when studios owned everything down to their actors. Do you guys still stand by your opinions, or do you think that those fears are legit?
Sil enlightened me to that reality, and that reality sounded terrifying, especially given the treatment that it sounded like some of the studios had, or some of the studios would enact on their actors and stuff. No, I don't think that's a good place to go back to. That sounds more monopolistic than, a giant theater chain.
I don't know how to answer the question, because I certainly don't. I took one film class in my college days, and we learned a whole lot about how, everything about an actor's life was curated by the studio. The studio, when they said they owned them, it was almost down to what they would eat when they would be in public. Every piece of their public life was, even to their marriages and relationships, like, so much was cultivated to have an image that reflected back on the studio. Certainly that's not what I would want to go back to. But I will say too, in terms of the moving to more of a luxury experience, a lot of theaters were already going there, because even before the pandemic, the theater experience was in decline. There was a very demonstrable decrease in the number of people going to the cinema. I live in a little town, like I said. We got the plush, bendy, huge, like, first class seats. They upgraded the whole theater. We got not the open bar, but the bar where you can get the Coca-Cola Icy with bourbon. Like, we were already on that path. So I don't know that it's I think that's where we were already going for theaters. They had to provide more than just a big fat screen. But no, I mean,
Agreed.
I don't want them to go back to studio authoritarianism.
Honestly, I had a theater experience I mentioned this too, like when I went to visit my family out of town over the Christmas holidays, and I went into a theater that was not the kind of plush, like, retractable seats and whatnot, where I was literally shoulder to shoulder with strangers, and it was like going back into the dark ages. Like, it felt like, oh, how did we live like this when I was watching that movie? And I definitely think it's the way to go.
Well, whether you're a fan of theaters or prefer staying at home to stream your content, it's never great to see a business go under that employs a lot of people around the nation. Hopefully, AMC, Regal, Cinemark, and all the rest can pull through once we move back to some kind of normal, even if that means their normal has to change. We've talked about the MCU a lot on this show, like a ton. But how can a show about nerd culture not talk about the biggest thing to bring nerd culture to the mainstream since probably ever, actually, not Star Wars? Anyway, one upcoming MCU thing we haven't yet talked about is the return of the infamous Blade. Last year, it was announced that Blade would be coming to the MCU in the form of renowned actor Mahershala Ali. Not a lot of real news has come from the pre-production of the film, but lately people have been hyping themselves up with fan-made posters, images, and even trailers. How familiar are you guys with the original Blade movies?
Hella familiar. Is that a good answer?
Just hella. I watched them. So
I owned them. I mean, that was back in the day whenever you would buy movies if you were a fan of them and you tried to have the library. I owned the Blade movies. I saw them all multiple times. I mean, I wouldn't say I was fanatic but I owned them, and so I watched them many times. And if they pop up on like FX or something, I'll pause and I'll take some moments to enjoy it.
Same. They came out at a weird time for me. I had just graduated high school, and I was going to a military academy for college, and it was a little bit after the release of Blade that I got to like really watch it, but I dug it, man. In fact, in researching for just this segment, I watched a couple of clips from Blade, and I was like, oh, that's why I liked this movie.
It was pretty
so
BA.
over the top.
Yeah. The Daywalker.
It reminds me of The Matrix, and just how like wearing sunglasses inside.
Sunglasses and black leather. That's what we were all about.
I follow a blog called Text from Superheroes, where they like make fake text conversations between various members of like the MCU or some of the DC heroes.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. And occasionally, whenever the MCU heroes are talking, Blade will show up in the chat and just be like, "Can some of you please help me with these goddamn vampires?" Well, Wesley Snipes was iconic in the role back in 1998 to 2004. Do you think Mahershala Ali can live up to the legend?
He's a very talented actor. He's an Academy Award winner, so it's not like he ain't got the chops. He's one of those guys, you've seen him in so many things for so long that you don't realize how much of your nerd culture is actually involved with this guy. I watched him on, oh my gosh, there was an Alien show. I think that's the first time I saw him. I can't really remember for sure. I don't know that it was aliens. People like disappeared into maybe an alien spaceship, but then came back many years later, and he showed up, and he was like an army man, and he was really good. And then he was awesome as Copperhead, I believe, in Luke Cage. But he's an Academy Award winner. He does big films. I think he will fill the shoes quite well. Plus, he looks the part for sure. I mean, look a picture of the comic book.
Yeah, totally. And the truth is, I've never. Let me preface this by saying, I've never starred in a feature film as a superhero, but Blade doesn't seem like that hard a character to play. There's not a ton of range there. They're standing there in sunglasses and looking angry. And maybe growling a line or two. And then the rest of it's, flipping around and getting a stunt double to help with the trickier stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't mean to undermine anyone's acting chops. Wesley Snipes, great actor. And Mahershala Ali, phenomenal actor. He's one of those actors again, and this is just a thing for me. I don't recognize names, but I recognize faces. And as soon as I saw his face, I was like, "Oh yes, I love that guy." I think I saw him first in like True Detective and a couple of really good roles.
With Sony's Morbius film, which great trailer by the way, bringing the first Marvel vampire into the fold. Do you think there is potential for Sony and Marvel's cinematic relationship to continue beyond Spider-Man with the Daywalker's entrance to the MCU?
I mean, that'd be great, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I think that Sony is really biding their time to have their own version of a universe, and the Spider-Verse is going to be their thing. I think they know that they hitched their trailer to a very profitable horse with the MCU, but I also think that the more distance they can play down the line, the better for them, the more profitable for them. They won't have to share nothing with Disney, and I think that's where they'll want to go, rather than having multiple characters in sharing space between the two universes.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think it's similar to any kind of exclusivity. Sony is I think it's definitely in Sony's best interest to keep these properties in hand, as opposed to share them or even give them up. There, I think, there's been a, not a resurgence, that's not the right word, but like as people have enjoyed comic books and have enjoyed just the very idea of superheroes, and even to like Lord of the Rings and fantasy stories and stuff, they've been a fantastic market for nerds who had an imagination to experience them via either just reading it or seeing pictures of it. It's not until very recently, historically speaking, that we could actually capture that and put it up on a screen. We have the technology to do special effects that actually do these superheroes justice. It's not as embarrassing as the like 1960s Adam West Batman, which, good on them for trying. But like,
Holy judgment, Batman.
They could make some phenomenal movies now, and it has, I don't know, it's completely changed the landscape, and it's made people, I think, appreciate these stories in a way that it's been impossible to appreciate them. People who don't tend to have the, I don't know, here's more judgment, but don't tend to have the imagination to, read a comic book and be blown away by it. To see it on the big screen with all the sound and, big names behind it, that has a much more significant impact. And I think Sony realizes that now, and it would be silly for them to give it up.
How do you guys think Blade, and subsequently vampires in general, will fit into the MCU? Will Blade maybe be an Avenger? Will someone we've known for ages turn out to be a vampire or get turned into one? Will we get a classic hero team up in the Blade movie?
My opinion is that I don't want to say the age of the Avengers is over, because obviously Avengers is going to continue in the MCU. However, the MCU is growing new legs. I mean, we will have a Fantastic Four, we will have X-Men, we will have a lot of other properties besides just the Avengers. So while the Avengers was certainly the catalyst, certainly the tip of the spear for the MCU, and these movies all tie together. That's one of the beauties of it. But I just don't think it's going to fall under the umbrella of Avengers, because it doesn't need to anymore. The Avengers set the stage, and now the stage is big enough to share it with a lot of other things happening. Will they cross over? Maybe, sure. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy are not the Avengers in any way. They're not. I mean, there's just huge distance between those two teams. However, at the end of Endgame, Captain America says, "Avengers assemble." So everybody was an Avenger in that moment. There could be moments like that for sure, but no, I don't think Blade is going to be an Avenger. I think that there will be I hope there will be another vein of another style of MCU movie that maybe is a little more gothic, a little more gritty and vampire-y. I would like that.
I have said before, and I will stand by, I love it when the worlds give nods to each other. Like, the more linked they are, the more real they feel to me. Whether or not Blade will be an Avenger, I don't know. Like, Avenger, I don't think means to me what it means to you, Jace. Like, it's just, like you said, at the end of Endgame, when Captain America was like, "Avengers assemble," and frickin' everyone showed up. Like, yeah, I mean, that's about what an Avenger means to me. Like, it's, yeah, I'm an Avenger today. So, could Blade be an Avenger? Maybe one day, and then only for that day, and then he goes back to whatever he's doing. I think it would be a cool nod to Blade being in that world. I also think that vampires are uniquely positioned to be a shadowy force behind the scenes. Kind of like the Court of Owls we had talked about a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, for the Batman.
A very Court of Owls-esque villain. The idea of vampires like being out in the open, and like the way, like, one of the scenes I watched was Blade, like his battle when he went into the club.
Oh, that's the iconic scene. Like that's
yeah,
it.
It was, but it was so tropey and over the top. Like the sprinklers came on, blood came out.
Yeah.
And, like that kind of vampire will not work in, larger Avenger MCU, because they're you think about, like, they're relatively weak compared to Thor and compared to even Blade. They're just henchmen, more or less. But it's the ancient vampires, the ones that have been around for a while, the ones that know things and have seen things and are like puppet masters of the world. That would be interesting.
You mean like Therese Invictus?
Yes, just like that.
Shout out to Blue.
Guys like vampires?
Personally, I think they're pasty and gross, but to each their own.
Okay, Divine Conclave. I don't know. I remember there was like an episode of one of the animated Avengers shows, where the Black Widow was turned into a vampire, and all I remember.
For real?
Yeah, she got turned into a vampire for a little while. And I remember it because like they were trying to subdue her, and they didn't actually manage to take her down. She just ran into a mirror so hard that she knocked herself out.
Oops.
That's intense.
Maybe.
Whoops.
Could she not see herself in the
Yeah,
mirror?
she couldn't see herself in the mirror. Well,
I meant
Blade
that as a
isn't-
joke, but that's awesome.
Yeah, they just need to put up vibranium mirrors all around. That solves it.
Right. Dude, I think we figured out how to beat Invictus.
Well, Blade isn't slated for a release date yet, and it'll be a while before we even get one, really. Initially, it wasn't intended for Phase 4 at all, which was supposed to end in late 2021, but with the entire lineup shifted back because of COVID, who knows. Phase 5 might not even be until 2023 or 24. We'll just have to sit tight and, marathon all of Phases 1 through 3 again. Spooky, scary skeletons are sitting down for some tea. It's tea time, boys, and in honor of the upcoming Halloween, the question today is, what would you be dressing up as this Halloween? If there weren't a pandemic going around?
I feel like my answer is underwhelming, so I'm going to go first and save the best for last. Because something tells me this holiday is a big one for Jace.
I like.
What did you call it?
It's Gay Christmas.
Yeah. I had a thing a while back where I would go as a variation of a zombie. Some like obviously deadly wound. I would get fake skin, and I'd put like a nail in my head or a saw blade in my head, or something that would have killed me. And then I would have old torn up clothes, and I would put on whatever pasty face makeup. However, as I've gotten, I don't know, like Halloween has become more about the kids than about me. And so now my outfit is literally just a giant, stupid purple hat. And I go as some variant of the Mad Hatter now. So that's my Halloween costume. Is a
Like
giant,
literally
stupid purple
that
hat.
every year you go as a variant of the same thing.
Listen, Jace, I don't need your judgment here. I'm sharing, okay? And I'm vulnerable right now, and I just need your acceptance and support.
Halloween is a big deal for us. Multiple reasons. I don't know what it is about Halloween that gays love so much, but it's a cliche tropey thing we just do. Our local town has this like social event where there's several people who put on this big, well, it's always been a big thing. Like my husband did a haunted house at the zoo, and hundreds of people would come, a huge big deal, and I would work at it, and we'd be scary, and we'd do several nights of the week of Halloween, and like literally show up at 6 and not go home till 1 in the morning, and tour people through and scare the hell out of them. That we don't do. And now there's this party that happens every year, or not this year, obviously. There's a party that happens every year. It's like this social event of the season, and we're a power couple at Halloween, so literally we win the Halloween costume contest every year. My husband really, because he's the one that's into like prosthetics and movie makeup, and he'll make me. Last year he made me up as this creation we made up, a bird man. So I won like most creative, and he went in drag, and he won best costume overall. But if I was gonna go this year, this is gonna sound like a humble brag, but because of COVID, I've lost some weight, and I can do some of the costumes that I haven't been able to do in like 3 or 4 years. And I think that I would pull off Captain America this year. And even though that's not a super creative costume, the fact that I can pull off a superhero bod this year is a big deal to me. So I think I would do that just so I'd feel a little bit better about myself.
I want to throw some condescending, judgmental remark, but I got nothing because that sounds fantastic. Damn it.
Yeah, like, so year before last, I went as Doctor Strange, and like full on cosplay Doctor Strange, not like the go to the Walmart and buy the costume. Like I paid way too much for the costume, and it was gorgeous. I like, the hair was perfect, everything was perfect, and so many people wanted pictures with me. But I idolize Captain America. Everyone who knows me knows this, and I think this is one of the few times in my life I don't anticipate staying in this shape for long, because I just don't have the discipline. But while I can do it, I need a cosplay level Captain America costume and a shield replica that will cost way too much, so that I can go in public and wear it. And I may just wear it more often than that.
That, like, my wife and I used to do that for the Texas Renaissance Fair. Like, we'd spend way too much and get costumes and go to that, but we don't do that too much anymore either. How about you, T?
So I've been a lot of things over the years, right? Sadly, not so much for like Halloween specifically, because we don't like Halloween's actually not that big of a thing where I live. I'm in like a suburban type area, but I don't know, like it's not.
Wait, what do you mean a suburban type? Like, that's Halloween Central.
You would think. You would think. But I don't know. No, I like last year we got like 2 trick-or-treaters.
Wow, it's disappointing.
Yeah, like so nowadays we just like we plan for Halloween parties, and that's why I've been getting my Halloween fix the last couple of years. But I mean, like I've had the cosplay grade costumes. I mean, I've done more of a steampunk captain-esque thing.
Oh, those are so fun.
Yeah,
You do strike me as a steampunk lady.
it's fun.
Mhm.
I've got a couple different variations of a costume for the Renaissance Fair. I dressed up as a Homestuck character at one point. Yes, I will admit that on this podcast.
A what character?
A Homestuck.
I don't
Don't ask
that
me to
doesn't-
explain it.
Okay.
I'll tell you later. Just not a.
Okay.
It was complicated, but I like it's one of those where like I had to use clay to like make the character's horns and like attach it to a wig somehow, and then like mock up a robotic arm. And
Goodness. That sounds
fun.
intense.
I think this year I probably would have gone as a variation of a vampire. Maybe it's just because like all the talk about Vampire the Masquerade or various other vampire media that's coming up again and being popular.
Like Blade.
Like Blade.
I've been a vampire before too. It was really fun.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I actually have a set of vampire teeth, like the fake vampire teeth. I've just
I
never
do
actually
too.
used them.
I have them too. I don't have them anymore because it got ucky, but I had like the black sclera contact lenses. It freaks people out.
Because I mean, I've done like the elegant floor-length black dress and then the black cape with the red lining. But now I have like some more medieval type pieces, and I was actually thinking about trying to mock up a medieval type vampire instead. I don't know. But if all else fails, I'll just be a pirate.
Yar.
If all else fails.
All else has failed. I'm literally doing nothing.
All else has. I've been wearing a giant purple hat the last couple of years and calling it a costume. All else has failed.
I may not even have candy for people to come to my house. If I can't celebrate, no one should get to.
Turn your lights off.
Yep. Sorry about it, kids.
All right. Well, if you guys would like to submit a tea time question for the podcast, or just ask me what the hell I think I'm talking about when I bring up Homestuck, head over to sokengaming.org/sokenmedia and find the submission bar on the right-hand side of the page. Also, if you want to tell us what you'll be wearing for Halloween, there's a Halloween contest up on the forums, which you can visit from, I think, literally any page that comes up. It should be in the top left-hand corner. Thank you guys for joining us today on the Sokan Podcast. This is our penultimate episode of the season, and next week's finale will be our final episode of 2020. So make sure to tune in and come back for 2021 in Season 7. For more Sokan Media, visit us at sokengaming.org/Sokan Media, follow our Twitter at Sokan Gaming, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sokan Gaming Community. And look for future episodes of the podcast on Google Podcasts and iTunes. Until next time, I've been T.
I was Jace.
And I've been Leo.
And we'll see you next week.
Stay classy, Sokan.
Thank you for listening to the Sokan Community Podcast. Craving more? Visit us on Twitter and YouTube at Sokan Gaming, as well as our website, www.sokengaming.com. Until next time, stay classy. Right, Jace?